Hello friends, welcome back to week 2 of our MOOC on climate change and disaster risk management. In the previous unit, we looked at how climate change affects our economy from agriculture and water sources to cities and livelihoods. But numbers alone don't tell the full story. Behind every statistic are real people and communities whose lives, homes, and futures are directly shaped by a changing climate. So today, we will focus on those people, the ones most affected, and understand why some are more vulnerable than others. This unit, Vulnerability and Climate Justice, asks a simple but powerful question: is climate change affecting everyone equally? Let's begin by knowing what vulnerability really means. Vulnerability means how likely a person or group is to be harmed by climate change. It's not just about being exposed to floods or heat waves. It's also about how prepared you are and what resources you have to cope. For example, if two families face the same flood, but one has a solid house and savings, while the other lives in a hut near the river, the second family is far more vulnerable. So vulnerability isn't just about geography. It's shaped by social, economic, and environmental factors. Things like poverty, gender, age, health, access to sport. In India, vulnerable groups include the poor, women, children, elderly people, indigenous communities, and those living in low-lying coastal areas. They are often hit hardest by extreme heat, droughts, floods, and food shortages. Let's take a closer look at some examples. Poor and slum dwellers, nearly 236 million people live in slums or informal settlements, often without drainage, air conditioning, or strong housing. During heat waves or floods, they face far greater risks than wealthier neighborhoods. Second group comes the women. In drought-prone areas like Rajasthan or Maharashtra, women walk long distances, sometimes 2 to 3 hours extra a day to fetch water or fodder. That means less time, more physical strain, and often poorer health. Elderly. The elderly struggle most during extreme heat or evacuations. In 2024, heat waves in Bihar caused hundreds of deaths, many among those over 60 years of age. Next vulnerable group is children. Climate change threatens their growth, nutrition, and education. When floods close schools or food runs short, children lose not just meals but learning and safety. Tribal and indigenous communities. About 10 crore people in India depend on forest. When droughts or forest fires reduce their cover, their livelihoods also vanish. Coastal populations. Rising sea levels and stalled water intrusion threaten farming and fishing. In the Sundarbans alone, thousands of people lose land every year due to flooding. In short, climate change hits those with the least resources the hardest. Now that we understand who is the most at risk, let's see what the numbers say about India's overall vulnerability. When we look at the data, the scale becomes very clear. Studies show that over 76% of India's population, that's about 1.1 billion people, is at high risk from heat. More than 600 million face multiple climate hazards like floods, droughts, and cyclones. So vulnerability isn't a distant concept. It's about people we know in places we live. It's part of a much bigger picture, a global imbalance between those who cause the problem and those who are paying the price. That brings us to the next theme, global inequality and climate justice. When we talk about climate justice, we are really talking about fairness. It's the idea that those who have contributed most to the problem, mainly richer industrialized countries, should take the lead in solving it. Meanwhile, poorer nations that contributed the least shouldn't have to bear the greatest burden. Let's look at a few revealing facts. The richest 10% of people produce about half of the global emissions, while the poorest 50% contribute only 10%. The United States and European Union together are responsible for over 40% of the total historic carbon emissions, while India's share is just 4%. And yet, India faces 80% more climate-related disasters than some richer nations. That's the injustice. Those least responsible are paying the highest price. Economists call this the climate inequality gap. It means that as the temperatures rise, so does economic inequality, both between countries and within them. Studies show that climate change is likely to make the gap between the rich and the poor even wider, increasing global inequality by more than 1 point on what's called the Gini scale. The Gini scale simply means how income is shared. 0 means everyone earns the same, and 100 means one person is having everything. The impact is expected to be even greater in developing countries like India. Now, you might ask, if the problem is unequal, what are global efforts doing to fix it? To answer that, let's look at the funding and technology divide. To correct this imbalance, richer nations pledged financial and technological support to the developing countries, most notably the $100 billion a year climate finance promise. But so far, only a small part of that money has actually reached the countries that need it most. Many funds are as loans, not grants, creating new debt for already struggling nations. And most green technologies are still owned by companies in the developed world, making access harder for poorer regions. At the 2022 and 23 global summits, the creation of the Loss and Damage Fund was a step forward, but the overall support still falls far short of the needed amount. Without stronger global cooperation, the gap between promises and reality will continue to widen. And while nations debate in the conference halls, people on the ground are already being displaced. This leads us to one of the most other viable consequences of climate injustice, that is climate refugees. Every year, millions of people lose their homes not to conflict but to climate change. These are the climate refugees. People forced to move because of floods, droughts, rising seas, or unbearable heat. Unlike war refugees, they have no international legal protection as yet. In India, about 14 million people are displaced every year by climate-related events. By 2050, that number could reach 45 million. Most migrate within the country from rural areas to nearby towns, but some also cross borders, especially from Bangladesh into India as rising seas swallow farmlands. In the Sundarbans, families lose land to erosion and flooding every year. In Rajasthan and Maharashtra, long droughts pushed farmers to cities like Mumbai and Pune. And when cities can't absorb these migrants, new social tensions often emerge. So, climate refugees aren't just statistics, they are families uprooted, livelihoods lost, and communities broken. We urgently need clearer policies, legal recognition, and regional cooperation to protect them before displacement grows into a larger humanitarian crisis. Now that we have seen the challenges, let's talk about what can be done. Building climate justice starts with action at every level. Firstly, recognize vulnerability, identify who is most at risk, and tailor policies to protect them. Secondly, increase global cooperation, ensure fair funding, technology sharing, and transparent climate finance. Thirdly, make climate action people-centered. In India, this means focusing on health, education, and livelihoods of affected communities. Lastly, put justice at the heart of transition. A just transition ensures that no one is left behind, that sustainability includes equity. Each of these groups moves us closer to a world that's not only greener but fairer. So friends, as we have seen, climate change is not just an environmental issue, it's a human issue, a justice issue. It deepens inequalities, displaces communities, and threatens the most vulnerable among us. But it also gives us a chance to create a more compassionate, cooperative, and sustainable world. Because if we act with fairness, resilience, and empathy, climate justice can guide us toward a balance. In our next week's lessons, we will begin Unit 3, which is Introduction to Disasters and Disaster Risk Management Cycle. We will explore what disasters are, how risks are defined, and how societies prepare, respond, and recover from them. Until then, think about this. If climate change is the storm, then justice is our compass to find the way through it. Thank you and see you in the next session.